Thank you for joining us this morning. I just want to draw your attention. The slides are available on the Gate Equity webinar page in the archive section. And we also have the recordings available at the end of the month usually, and they are on the Gate webinar page as well. Chat's more for commentary. If you do have a question for our presenters, please use the Q&A just for that. A growth mindset means that you're open to thinking about these new ideas and willing to push yourself to grow. And as with any professional development, you'll get out of it what you put into it. So thank you for staying present, focused, positive. We love to see our listeners get clock hours. And if you are interested in doing that, there is a link to PD Enroller that we're going to get into the chat for you. This month's pre-reading assignment was to complete a graduation scavenger hunt. And if you've done that, you've registered with PD Enroller, all you have left to do is send that on to Ronnie Larson. And that's going to be through PD Enroller. Once you've registered and completed the hours, we'll double check your attendance, and then an evaluation will be sent your way. And this is a free offering, so we do hope you can take advantage by watching this webinar and the next one. Thanks for joining us. This is the Gate Equity webinar for June. We're talking about Graduation 101, Supporting What's Next. I'm Kefi Anderson, OSPI Graduation Equity Program Supervisor. And we chose this topic because graduation holds so much promise for the future, and it's also a great opportunity to support students for what is the next step. We hope today that we can help you to change your practice and give you some great ideas. The objectives we hope to meet are to see statewide data sources for college enrollment and remediation, learn big ideas to support more students to the next step, learn from Sunnyside High School how they're implementing supports, as well as get you some great resources to get you started. I'm joined today by Kim Reykdal, Graduation Program Supervisor here at OSPI, and we also have special guest Dave Martinez, Assistant Principal at Sunnyside High School in the Sunnyside School District. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Here at OSPI, our vision is all students prepared for post-secondary pathways, careers, and civic engagements, and we're led by our values. And this webinar is brought to you through the Office of System and School Improvement. This afternoon, we're going to continue to talk about graduation with Graduation 201, supporting what's next for students who aren't on track for graduation. And for that, we have Vancouver School District talking about multiple pathways, so lots of interesting options for alternative learning there. And we'll also have Deanna Hogan with us talking about her specific program. So it would be great if you could join us for that next half too. We are taking the month of July off, so have a restful summer. We'll be back in August with more webinars. And we do have a webinar improvement survey, so if you would like to give us some advice on what time you want this webinar to meet, or if you just want to tell us that you like this time, so far we only have about 42 responses, and a lot of them are leaning towards changing the time. So if you like 10 o'clock, please let us know, and we'll try to take that under consideration.
Or if you don't, let us know that too.
Yeah.
What time
or
if
you don't. It's true.
Want to meet their needs.
We like to get to know our audience, so we want to be able to tailor this content to what you need. So we've added a question today to ask if you're from a school that's been identified for support. Those are through school improvement. We're also asking if you are a SIP coach. So we're going to run that polling question for you and figure out who is here. And as we go along today, we're going to pause periodically with these polling questions and also answer your questions from the audience. So you can feel free to address any Q&A throughout the presentation, and we will get to that when we get to a poll. So if you are other, it would be great if you would put into the chat what your position is, just so that we can have an idea of who is here. That helps us think about who else we might add as a category too. And as you can see, we've got a lot of counselors in the house. We've got some teachers, some district folks, administrators, a nice spread. So thank you guys for joining us. And it looks like people are somewhat familiar with this topic. Graduation might be something people have heard of before. There are not, well, it looks like there's a pretty even spread of people who are possibly in those comprehensive and targeted supports or not. So next up, we have Kim Reykdal with us. And Kim is a great resource for graduation and leads the graduation team here at OSPI. Kim, do you want to tell our audience a little more about why graduation is such an important focus here?
Sure, thanks, Kefi, and good morning, everyone. Happy to be here with you today. So here at OSPI, we know it is important to focus on graduation because our agency's vision, as Kefi already shared with you, is that every student will graduate and be ready for career, post-secondary education or training, and a life that includes civic engagement. So as you can see from this slide, if you're taking a look, you can probably tell that I've spent my entire professional career as a teacher, school counselor, and now a state level supporter of K-12 education, and also my 15+ years as a parent, working towards that same vision, both for my own children and for many of the students throughout our state. It's my passion in life, and I'm really just super excited to be here today to share a bit with you this morning on what we can do together to support students as they graduate and start that next chapter in their lives. So I want to start and take a few minutes just to examine a little bit of some snapshot data points that come from OSPI's state report card, the Education Research and Data Center new high school dashboards. If you haven't seen those yet, I hope you check them out, and our 2018 Healthy Youth Survey results. These data points can be a starting point for some of those courageous conversations that might need to be happening in your building. So I want to talk a little bit about those. As you can see, there are some things that we should be really proud of as a state, including that we have reached our highest ever overall graduation rate last year at 81%. That is worth celebrating. However, we also can tell that there is still room for improvement, in that almost one out of every 5 kiddos is still not making it to that endpoint in our system. And so thinking about how can we do things differently to reach all kids. Can also see that there's room for improvement in our college matriculation and especially in our persistence rates, especially if we think about the fact that 2/3 of jobs now are requiring some post-high school education or training of some kind. So looking at this data would make me wonder, what could I be doing differently or better to ensure that my college-bound students not only know what to expect when they get there, but also have those skills to help them persist? And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. You may also be wondering why there's a smiley face by the stat that says 54% of students did not receive any kind of college degree within 8 years of graduating. And while that stat may seem like a downer, Debbie Downer face, it's actually getting smaller. So that's why the smiley face is there, because we are seeing a downward trend, and knowing, of course, that this data is considerably lagged. So this is really thinking about the kids of 2009 graduates, because we need those 8 years of persistence data. So we only hope and expect to see that number to continue to go down, knowing that our state has been really focused on graduation as a point of focus, as well as those post-secondary options for all our kids, helping them get there. And then finally, a number that I would hope all staff would be looking at locally is just one of the many stats within our 2018 Healthy Youth Survey data. This one is of particular interest to me because it says that 67% of our 10th graders reported that their school courses are not usually interesting to them. And as the person who oversees high school and beyond planning and graduation and school counseling, I think that's a really great opportunity for us to really be thinking about how are we helping students see the connection between their interests, their post-high school dreams, goals, etc., and what they're taking now. So we hopefully increase not only the interest, but the engagement in their education. Obviously, because this is a GATE webinar, we want to make sure you all are aware of what are some of the data sources that are out there for you to be utilizing, that being an important part of any system of improvement, and any kind of support system is looking at those numbers and asking what story are they starting to tell for us. So in addition to the data sources I just shared with you on the previous slide, which are linked again here in the green box, you can also access building level data on OSPI state report card if you want to take a look at it from the state perspective. But really your own student information system, as I'm sure you're well aware, is going to be the most current and relevant data that you can pull to look for gaps in your student outcomes locally. Organizing your own academic, attendance, and discipline data, among other points you might be looking at, into some kind of early warning system is a key strategy for really making some progress towards better outcomes on the graduation and post-secondary side of the K-12 system. And then obviously using some kind of universal screening tool or social emotional learning assessment, the healthy use survey potentially. We're always looking for more schools to engage in that process because it's the one source of data that we get at the state level that is anonymous, where kids are answering a wide range, as many of you know, a fair number of questions around topics we don't typically assess in our schools. So hope more of you will jump on that the next time it comes around. We're looking to pilot a electronic version of it actually, and hopefully start to simplify that process for you. With that being said, some kind of assessment that gets at the social and emotional pieces of the data side of our kiddos, combining that with the academic and the career and college readiness and the discipline, can give you more of a holistic view of where your kids are at, and developing that into an early warning tool is really a best practice for making positive outcomes. And then using that to inform the development of hopefully a multi-tiered system of support, MTSS. You've probably heard that acronym before. PBIS, RTI, or a couple other acronyms that get thrown out around in the same vein of basically creating tiered interventions and using data and continuous improvement cycles of inquiry to really improve outcomes for kids, and build those prevention, intervention, and retrieval support strategies that will address all of our kids' needs and get them on track to graduate and ready for those outcomes we talked about earlier. And then when we think about data on an individual student level, we know obviously we have a number of our students with disabilities who have their own individualized education plan, and that gives us a lot of information on how to support them specifically. Probably the best equivalent we have for all kids is the high school and beyond plan. Obviously it's not nearly as in-depth as an IEP, but it's full of potential data points that we can be using to help kids help themselves. So love Cuba Gooding Jr. and Help Me, Help You, him and Tom Cruise. That scene is one of my favorites from the movie. This is how we help kids, is looking at some of the data points saved in their high school and beyond plan and figure out how can I use that information to get them access to resources, access to college visits, access to career field trips, etc. Scholarships. There's lots of ways you can use those plans to connect and engage with them in their education and making good informed course choices. And hopefully using that to spark some hope for their future, especially for those kids in those tier 2 and tier 3 levels of our multi-tiered system of support who really need those wraparound services to help them figure out how they're going to move forward in their life. Other state exam scores, ASVABs for military, it's not just a military test. It really is 8 different areas that often aren't tested in schools that can really give kids some interesting data points on their skill sets. They always can opt out from having the connection with the recruiter if they're not interested in the military, but boy, it's a different kind of assessment that they give them some good ideas of where they're at in some unique areas, especially if they're STEM focused. If they're taking the SAT or ACT, PSAT, those are again good data point pieces for us to look at of their skill sets in those math and science and ELA areas. And the AccuPlacer or Compass if they're going into Running Start or looking at that 2-year college system. Again, all of these are different data points on an individual student level that we can be using to really paint a picture of where are kids at a given point in time and what might we be able to do to continue to educate them and help them in the areas where they need some support, and then also keep them moving forward where they have strengths. Really tying that now through House Bill 1599, which we're not going to dive into today in this webinar, but more information will be coming around the different graduation pathways and possible career options, leading us to those important discussions about how can the courses they're taking and the activities they're engaging in be relevant to their interests and their goals and really increase those outcomes. I think I've found it in my own personal practice. I've seen it across the state that when we connect students' current reality with some kind of an achievable goal or something that they hope to accomplish in life, we really can help them see that graduation is that important next step in preparing them for that future that's meaningful to them. So thinking about not just graduation, but what comes after. Because I think there are lots of ways in the K-12 system that we can be doing some work to help prepare kids for that next step so that we're seeing them progress on and become those productive societal members that me as a almost 48-year-old knows I need to have in my life so that I can have a retirement someday. So we're counting on them to keep that system moving. So While graduation rates are certainly an important focus point, we know that we need those students leaving our system to get some additional information and supports so that transition into adulthood, they're ready for it. On this slide, you're going to see some suggested resources, which are mostly linked here, and that many of our students need to know about as they transition either to a college of any kind, a job, that first job, and just life as a young adult. Whether it is locally based or state level, the resources that I've linked to here are some of my should know and should offer resources and activities for school counselors, career and college specialists, and other staff working with students who are moving on to their next stage in life. While there are a lot of options that exist to help students transition to college, we spend a lot of time and attention there in all of its forms. There are fewer resources and sometimes less awareness of them for students who want to go straight into their first job. For students who are graduating with an associate's degree or maybe an industry-based credential or other advanced coursework from your school, they actually could be ready and consider applying for jobs that are beyond entry level. So they may need to have some of that encouragement to know that they might be able to do that with that additional credentialing already in their back pocket. And then ensuring that all students leave with an updated resume and that they can articulate their related experiences and skills into a cover letter and have some kind of practice with interviewing skills. Those are all some key strategies to helping them land that first job. And again, one of the things I found most helpful for a lot of kids when they were thinking about, oh my gosh, my future, is reminding them that they're just trying to figure out what they're going to do first when they leave us. And sometimes just that framing can really take down some of their anxiety and help them really be more proactive in thinking about what's next, because they won't think, oh yeah, it's for the rest of my life. That can be daunting, especially for kids who often can't think about what they want to have for lunch the next day, much less what they want to do for, another 40 years. So I linked you here to some local work source, not a local, but a state level work source website in case you don't have a local office in your area. Those staff can be really of great assistance in providing that in-person support with this process for your students. Sometimes they'll even come out to your school if you just ask. If there isn't an office nearby, this link will lead you to a lot of the same supports on an online version. And the State Department of Labor and Industries is also linked here. They have a wealth of information on what it means to be ready to be an apprentice, what are some of our state's registered programs, how do I apply, how do I get ready to do that. That can be a great opportunity for many of our kids who want that first work experience, but maybe want to get more training under their belt first. For students considering the military or just not even sure about that as an option, military.com is kind of that one-stop shop website that links to information on all the branches and can really help students better understand what those options are before they maybe reach out to a recruiter. In particular, I always try to help students understand, as my brother did as an enlistee, that he got all of his education, college education and training paid for. He always had a job available for him, and it was a great way for him to have the structure he needed to grow and develop as a young adult. And then I linked you to Passport to Careers on the Washington Student Achievement Council's website, because this is a new program that has been combined with the Passport to College to provide some additional supports for students who have been in foster care or experiencing homelessness, with both preparing, applying, and potentially paying for college and different career preparation programs, especially those that lead to apprenticeships. So happy exploring on those as you go into summer. And then, of course, when it comes to life readiness, for many students, there's nothing more relevant than knowing how to take care of their finances. And while many of our parents are doing a great job helping them understand that at home, I find that sometimes students need that reality check of, what does it actually mean to live out on my own? And what do expenses typically cost? And then how much do I need to now be thinking about? So this reality check and the Jumpstart Library, those are some great resources for helping students get a handle on finances, and then some city, county, and state links to resources in safety nets in different areas, just to give you an idea of some places to go to look for those social supports. And then Washington Connection through DSHS can get you connected to anything locally that might provide some of those safety net pieces for kids who might need them. And then trying to go quickly here because I'm already past what time I tried to set for myself. Summer melt. So this is for those kids who we know are trying to go on to technical 2-year and 4-year colleges. This is the idea that we will know in June, usually through our exit interview process, that students are planning to go to college. But then when we look at the data through the ERDC, we will see that not all of them get there and actually enroll in the fall. The last time I checked this, when I was a career and college readiness counselor here at a local high school, I had 12 to 14% summer melt. And that made us realize, wow, we need to do some things differently. So the strategies you see on the board, these are from Harvard's 9 Steps to Making Your College Plans a Reality, and their summer melt tools, which I've linked for you here, as well as a workshop that the Washington College Access Network put on in 2017 that lists kind of some 3 broad buckets of ways to reach out to students and to help them make those connections to that next step. The summer to-do lists that are linked here are from the Puget Sound Career and College Network. They have created actual lists of things to do over the summer and into the fall at 14 of our colleges in the Puget Sound area that help walk kids through that process of getting there, getting enrolled, getting signed up for the next year even. You can modify that for colleges and work with your local area colleges to do something similar if you're not in the Puget Sound area. But really looking at ways to try to make those personal connections with our kids who are moving forward and ask them what they might need to know how to expect what's next. I'd love to go into this in more detail, but I want to get to Dave and the story from Sunnyside. So if you have any specific questions, please feel free to put those in the chat and I'll try to reach back out to you and share out more information with you directly. And then last but not least, if you're thinking, wow, this is an area that really we probably should put some more focus, I wonder what my summer melt numbers look like. I have no idea where my kids are at with that process. I encourage you to go to the ERDC's new high school data dashboards and take a look at your school's data specifically. Remember, there's a lag of usually a year or 2. And so you'll have to go back and look at your senior exit surveys or your college transcript requests and get a feel for where your kids were at a year or 2 ago, and then look at that data or start it from this year. Make sure you've got all that information before your kids leave this month, and then be able to look at that a year from now. And then I'm encouraging you to take a look at OSPI's Integrated Student Supports Protocol. It was a document developed in a very collaborative fashion with many stakeholders. And on pages 7 through 13, there are a list of questions that you as a school and a staff could be asking yourselves around what do we already have available to support students, what resources are in place, and where are our gaps and our deficits in these supports. Maybe look at your data in combination with that and see how you can align those supports into that multi-tiered system of support. So the PBIS website here that I've linked you to has got some great tools as well for designing that multi-tiered system of support so that you can get your kiddos ready to go. And that's as much as I'm going to cover today, because our real highlight this morning is going to be the story of Sunnyside and Dave. But before we get there, we do have one sort of wrap-up question to my part of this. And that is basically taking a look at, we're curious about how many of you out there are using some kind of senior exit survey or other process for tracking your seniors post-high school plans. If you've got something in place that you do with every student, please click the appropriate bubble as it is. But if you are unsure or not doing this yet, I would just leave you with a thought that that's a really great way to stay connected to your kids, get their contact information if they're willing to let you stay connected with them, and use some of those strategies to keep supporting them into that next school year to the best of your ability as a staff.
Thank you, Kim.
All right.
You're so knowledgeable. What great resources. There's so much out there to check out. I'm going to share these polls with everybody. So it looks like there's about 42% that said yes, all students, and there's a lot of people who aren't sure. So there's an opportunity there to check it out and learn something new. And Dave's going to take over control here for a second, but I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Dave. Dave Martinez is just this incredibly inspiring person to know. He's an assistant principal at Sunnyside High School. which is a majority low-income school, and it has a high population of English learners. Their implementation of integrated student supports is serving as a model across the state, and I can't tell you what a huge treat it is to have him here with us, just to share Sunnyside's story and to share some of what they've learned with you. So welcome, Dave. We're really glad you're here.
All right, thanks for having me this morning. We just wrapped up graduation Friday night, so it's fresh on our plates, and if you can believe it, we're getting ready for next year. So let me just start off with this slide here. This gives a little bit of information about us. Big change over the last 10 years. We graduated 90% of our students last 3 years, and we will be there again this year. And we were, as you compare that to 10 years ago, we were under 50% graduation rate. This is some of our special POPs data. We pay attention to the state analytics a lot. That's a great site if you aren't familiar with that. We dig into that all the time. We'll look at how we're doing compared to the state, but we also look at this and compare ourselves to ourselves. And we know where there's some work still to happen, and that's why the state analytics is super important for us to take a look at. A little bit about me there. I'm an assistant principal here. Ryan Maxwell is the principal at our building. I've been here since 2001. And an assistant principal since the 2007-2008 school year. On this slide, we're talking a little bit about why we do the work we do. As I said before, we were below 50% graduation rate. We'd just closed our alternative school. We weren't finding that we were successfully serving our students in the alternative school. So we knew we had a huge shift to make as a building in a district. We were fortunate enough to be able to partnership with Gonzaga University. Dr. Salina actually partnered with him prior to him coming and being our turnaround principal. He had done some reports for us on the impact when we closed the alternative school, the impact our school within a school was having on our students. So we were fortunate. Dr. Salina came aboard in the 2010-11 school year, helped us to make sense of the work we were doing. We use, like I said, our data regularly. You can see some of our trend data here. When Dr. Salina came on board, he really helped our teacher efficacy, and that was one of the big things that our staff hasn't changed a lot. In fact, our admin team is the same admin team we had when we were in 2008. We've added on some new ones just because of the size of our school. We've gone from a school of 1,200 to a school of over 2,000 now. So there's been a lot of growth in our school, and you can see our graduation numbers there. I want to talk a little bit about, this is the work that Dr. Salina brought into us, and this is a conceptual framework. And this is super important because this is why Sunnyside High School is the way it is today. And our conceptual framework is built on 3 pieces. Academic press, and how that's defined for us is it's having a high standard for students and staff. And the important part about that too is a belief that they can meet it. Sometimes people can have the high standard without a belief that all people can make it, and students. And so academic press is our first leg of this triangle. The second part is the social support, and those are the supports that are put in place to help students and staff meet those goals. But the glue that holds it all together is the relational trust. And that's a piece that the person that's giving it helps the person receiving it feel safe. The person receiving it sees that that person has something to offer, and that the person giving it is providing time and expertise for them, putting in time and time for them to help them be successful. That's the glue that holds our framework together. And when we say when all those come together, that's where the culture of learning comes together. We usually on this slide, I'll put in Grizzly culture, because we talk about this when this is all working the way it should and the way it does. That's the culture of this building, is that piece. This slide here, I'm going to back up a little bit to the 2008 school year. We'd closed our alternative school, and we basically built an SLC for students that weren't being successful, and it was a school within a school. When we had Dr. Salina come in, that was before he was our turnaround principal, he came in and did a report for us. And what he showed was that actually the school within a school was having more success than the comprehensive high school at the time. And it was really on 2 big factors. It was the conceptual framework, but we didn't know that's what we were doing in the program. It wasn't intentional. We knew that the students needed to have strong relationships, and we know that they needed support. When Dr. Salina came in 10-11, he was able to define what it was, and then we were able to do this for the whole school. We no longer have a school within a school anymore. All our interventions are based on their academic needs. We have built in some behavior support programs now, but as far as classrooms, it's all based on the academic needs of a student. Again, the conceptual framework there. Some of the things that we've added on now, we've created a really powerful relationship with comprehensive mental health. And instead of it being a parallel program, we've integrated it into our building. The person has kept the relationship with comprehensive because we needed to be tied to a school psychiatrist or to a psychiatrist, or for staffing purposes, any meds, anything like that that would be tied to a mental health agency. We have that support from them because we've kept that relationship. Our therapist is actually an alumni from Sunnyside. She graduated from the UW, did some site-based therapy over in Seattle, and we stole her back, and now she's part of our Grizzly family again. And it's really neat to have that piece. It's a piece that we had really been missing. We knew we had students that needed extra support, and these kids come from, it can be your 4.0 two-sport athlete, to the students that aren't involved, but there's a need definitely within high schools to be able to provide that on-site integrated mental health support. And it's been a huge tool for us, and we're seeing huge gains there. We obviously, the more work we do with our 9, 10, 11, the less of the heavy lifting we have to do in the senior year. As Reykdal was talking about earlier, we use the Google Forms a lot, and we track our grade levels. We know our attendance, our behavior, and we know their academics, and we staff that each week, creating change plans for those students and bringing parents in to help make some change plans in place. So our goal is to get that next 10%. We're working super hard to do that. Let me give you 2 big ideas that are big impacts on our school. I'm going to start with the box on the right, actually, and that's an important piece. We call it CBE around Sunnyside High School. It's Connect, Build, and Envision. 3 simple concepts, but super, super important in our building. And that is, we want our students and our staff to be connected to our school. Usually when you hear someone say that school, it's usually not going to be associated with something positive. So we want to make sure that our staff and students are always saying, our school does this. Because we know when people say that, it's usually associated with something positive. And so it's super important that our staff and students feel connected. Obviously, there's always an important piece is to have the strong relationships, student to student, student and staff, staff to staff. Those relationships are what carry us through when it gets tiring in the middle of the year, the end of the year. Those relationships are what really carry our building. And then the importance of being able to envision your future. We want our students to be able to know that there's life after SHS, and being able to see the work that they're doing right now and how that's going to impact them for graduation and beyond the walls of SHS. And that's important for our staff to see that the work that they're doing is having a positive impact. So they're able to see the work that they do, they're able to envision that the work they're doing impacts our school and our student body. Earlier on, we heard about the summer melt, and it's funny, I actually have a meeting in about 45 minutes. We have one of the universities that's coming here to talk about what we can do to partner up to make sure that our students that are going off to that university are being successful. We've got some really strong relationships with the universities, and it's fun. It's quite frankly, if you had asked me 9 years ago, we had our motto around here was graduation matters. And I remember there was a community member that came in and said, really just graduation. And at that time when we were 49% graduation rate, yeah, it was graduation matters, but it still matters a lot. But we also know that we have to make sure we're setting our students up for post-secondary plans, life readiness. And so this is our attempt to be able to track that throughout the year, and then to be able to build that relationship with the post-secondary schools that we're being able to transition. And they're super interested in being able to know what our students need to be successful. Some of the things that we do universally for all our students have advisory. They're with the same advisor for 4 years. They start as 9th grade and go through the senior year. Done some neat things that we've added on to that over the last few years. Our senior advisory teachers, all of them come to our senior breakfast on the rehearsal day. Very strong relationships built between the advisor and that group of 20 students. It's another set of eyes. And then AHOD, you know what? I actually skipped that piece. I'm going to go back some slides because that's kind of a super important. This is the box on the left there. It's all hands on deck. How we manage our seniors to make sure that there's no surprises is we have 4 grade level counselors. We have 2 social workers. We have a school psych and a migrant graduation specialist. And we just take all the seniors and we split them up into caseloads. And on the caseloads, we have a color system. It's pretty simple. Green is on track. Yellow is credits. Orange is state testing only. and red is state testing and credits. And so each of the case managers has a caseload of red, yellow, green, and orange students. And it's just a way for us to track and make sure that they're going and that they have the right support, and that we have parents come in early so that they know what the graduation plan is. If they're a student that isn't green, we've met with those parents before school starts and shared the graduation plan. So parents are aware of it, students are aware of it. Sometimes we'll get asked, how do you get parents in? And we just call them and invite them in. They really are super concerned and want to make sure their sons and daughter are on track for graduation. And then we'll do another one at the beginning of second try, a meeting just to see what changes took place. And then sometimes you have a senior that's been green and decides to not do as well as they should and fail a class they need first try. That student now is no longer green, and we'll have those parents in. Same thing happens for second try. We're going to talk a little bit more about this at the conference this summer. This is a short definition of a very powerful support system we have in our building. And so I'll go back to that piece. That's the advisory and the AHOD for our seniors. Again, we target our seniors, obviously, knowing who they are that need to have that support. And we have a pre-PLC meeting on Wednesdays where it's called our Success Triangle meeting, and it's where our attendance, our behavior team, and our grade level counselors, social workers, everybody's there at that meeting. And it's really just making sure that there's no one slipping through the cracks. We don't have to staff and talk about every kid, but we just have to make sure who is the person that's going to be checking in with that kid for that week, and then creating plans with those students. Many times you can feel like the counseling department has to be the only intervention, and that can get overwhelming for a counseling department. There's need to be an awareness and knowing what's going on with the students in the counseling department, but there's many members of the Army that can make sure that the work is happening. And so that's what that Success Triangle meeting is all about. Personalized, we talked about this, the meetings that take place, talked about the importance of our social emotional support with our comprehensive partnership, and also the 2 social workers that we have on campus too. We're working super hard. We want to make sure that we close that last 10%, and we know it's going to take some very intentional, focused attention to all our students. This is a big piece to talk about that Grizzly culture. This is the culture for learning. You can see the definition of what that is. And you can see the importance. There's the trust present at all levels of organization. Each person is willing to take responsibility. Around here, especially as we get closer to the end of the year, our staff hang on super tight to kids. They make sure there's a lot of communication happen with our senior counselors and the senior teachers. It's a really neat team effort that happens. The 90% doesn't happen by accident. You know those you serve and the why behind the work. It's very clear around here. The embracing ownership of all students. This is a big piece. As I said, we closed our alternative school in 2008. That when that happened, it was our numbers were our numbers. There wasn't an alternative school where students may end up going to and it would show a comprehensive high school at a 90% graduation rate when the district's actually at a 65%. Because that can be dangerous. You can think you're really doing 90% of your kids in your high school age in your district are being successful when they really aren't. And so that was a big piece when Ryan Maxwell was Principal of the Year a couple of years ago for the state of Washington. That was his platform, Own Your Kids. When you have that piece in place, it really does make you think of all systems that need to be intact. And so that's a big piece of our school and our school district. All players have a voice. Our student council is super important. Our teacher voice is super important with our PLCs. They've done some very neat academic supports they've created within our teacher ranks. In the very end, this is the piece that's been a big change. Leadership's accountable. They can't be responsible for everything, but they sure are responsible for things. And it's okay to be held accountable for things because it makes you check your systems and see where things aren't working and where they need to be tweaked. That was a big change that Dr. Selena brought into us in 10-11 is go ahead and try something. If it doesn't work, then just tweak it and make it better. And our staff feel the same way. They want to try something new, working with a special pop in their classroom. They bounce it off of their administrator and they would try it out. If it didn't work, then they would try something else. If it did work, then we'd make sure that's part of the game plan. I was asked to give some information, maybe some ideas on how rural districts could to make an impact. One of my suggestions is to make sure you utilize the ESD supports that are out there. They're an asset that doesn't often get tapped into enough. And then really look deeply at your resources. People come in and they say, oh, you guys have all these resources at Sunnyside High School. We're pretty intentional about when we bring in a new system. And we don't just do it off the seat of our pants. We really look at where's there a gap, and then what will that person do to help close that gap. And that was the last piece we brought in with the mental health therapist and making it a parallel part of our school. Just look at what you have in place and try to build the system out of that. My last advice on schools is just start. You're gonna make mistakes, and that's okay. You just tweak it and make it better from what you learn. I think sometimes, I know we were guilty of this before our transformation. We were just paralyzed by our numbers and we didn't do anything. And so given the permission just to start and to do it sometimes is all you need to do. The biggest thing for us is it can happen. We're looking at Sunnyside High School. It's socioeconomic status super low. Our demographics are not what you would think for a 90% graduation school district. Hopefully we can be an example of that. Any school district can make this work. As I said earlier, we're presenting. It's going to be Dr. Celine is going to be there, Dixie Grunfeld. We also have some elementary schools that are going to be presenting with us. And you're going to see an example of how the systems can work from an elementary through high school, and middle schools will be there also. Both our middle school principals are going to be presenting. If you get a chance, I know it's a pre-conference. It's on that Sunday. Not always a fun time to go to learn stuff, but we're excited about what we're going to be able to offer and get a chance to go listen to the whole team present. You'll be able to get more detail. We're going to do some breakout sessions with people that attend that conference so they can ask specific questions on different systems we have in place.
Thank you, Dave. You're so knowledgeable. Your story is so inspiring. We do have a couple of questions from the audience if you're willing to entertain a couple of them.
Sure.
Looking at your graduation numbers, you have just an amazing result with your students with disabilities. What's your approach to addressing those needs?
One of the big things is making sure our school psych is amazing. All school psychs are, but he does a great job of making sure that our special pop students are taking the classes or that are passing the classes they need for graduation. They're creating graduation plans. So that piece is super important. That sometimes special education students' efficacy can be super low. And so it's being that coach, helping them see that the work they're going to do is going to help them get to graduation.
Nice. Another question that we got was, how has your master scheduling been impacted by your efforts?
Hugely. Sorry, that could be a whole session on that. We did this for the first year. We just handed out our schedules for next year at our Moving Up Assembly last Wednesday. So our last day of school is Friday. Our schedule is built around the academic supports needed for students. So we talked about the red, yellow, green, orange system before. There's a schedule for green students that are the honors and the college and the high school track. We have state support classes that are built into the master's schedule. Our electives, because we become more healthy as a graduating school, we were able to offer a variety of electives from piano to guitar to drum those are things that have impacted master schedule. And it's one that I tell our counselors are amazing. Our schedule is never all the way done because as students get done with state testing, and our staff is super flexible at this, they can transition out of state testing support classes into a class that isn't state support. So master schedule was definitely impacted. Our CT department is amazing. They've been super flexible and very creative. Our admin team it takes a whole group. Our teachers pick the classes they're going to teach based on our needs, our student requests, and then our admin and each that are in charge of each of the departments go and they work with the teachers to make sure they've got a solid plan that comes back together. So hopefully I answered that question for you, but hugely it was impacted.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing.
Trimester schedule. I don't know if I said that.
Dave, are you on the 5-period a day try?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. We do have another question. Audience members, feel free to use that Q&A if you have questions too. How do you get parents engaged and how do you get them to show up? Do you have a positive first contact or what does that look like?
Yeah, that question gets asked a lot. Our secretaries in the counseling department are powerful. They're very good at diagnosing, but we found that really just calling them and saying, hey, we want to go over your graduation plan for your son or daughter. can you please come in? There's some that we have to do home visits with, but I would say 90% come in, and they come in for that meeting because they want to know where their son or daughter is for graduation. It's a big deal. We have our graduations done on a football field. It's a big community event. There's 5,000 people that come. So it's a big deal, and we found that our parents want to come in when they're invited.
That's a nice framing to go over the graduation plan. I like that.
And Dave, this is Kim, if I could just ask for a little clarification.
Sure.
At what point in their high school career are you having those conversations, and how often?
You mean the post-secondary conversations, or which one? The graduation, or all of them?
Well, both. I mean, you're saying you're having some really good luck having parents come in talking about, graduation and post-secondary. So I'm wondering when you initiate those, like at what point in the kiddo's high school career, and do you do it more than once?
Yes and yes. So
Okay.
We'll start. So like I talked about the success triangle meetings, and it was just kind of that work has been impactful on our graduation meetings because there's a relationship. It'll usually start off with either an interventionist or a behavior or attendance intervention. It could be a grade level counselor depending on where we are and how severe they are in their needs. And then what will happen is if that meeting didn't have an impact, then I'm usually invited in and doing kind of a mini graduation, whether it's 9th, 10th, or 11th grade. Those have had super important, and we're showing every one of our meetings is trying to show students their graduation plan, whether they've just had a horrible trimester one as a 9th grader or whatever it is, just showing them how they're going to be able to get themselves back on track and how we can as a school support them. So there's always this feeling of hopefulness that comes out of our meeting when we're doing those. And then looking for ways to connect the students back in the building, helping them see that, finding out who they have a strong relationship and then tapping into that relationship, whether it's a student to student or a staff member, and then helping them see that the 4 years at Sunnyside High School are going to go by super fast.
Yeah, for sure. One of our listeners is wondering how attendance has affected student learning, and how did you improve student attendance? James
Wise, we call them gardens in our building. I have counseling and student life. He has attendance and math. He's done some very cool stuff with utilizing our PowerSchool data and Google.
Mm-hmm.
And he's built a variety of incentives and supports for our attendance. And we're a closed campus, but our juniors and seniors can earn open campus if they have a 90%, both classes together, APA, not ADA, but APA. So and our kids, our juniors and seniors are listening for that every week. Did they get a 90% APA each week? That's one of our big incentives, is trying to help our juniors and seniors learn about open campus.
I appreciate that. We sent out a news flash today about attendance with a video from our superintendent, because of course September is Attendance Appreciation Month, and even though we're all focused on closing down schools and graduation right now, we all have to think ahead to the start of the next year, as you well know. So that's a great segue for us just to be thinking about how we want to wrap this up with you and kind of close out this school year, but also know that we're already starting to send out resources and information about the start of next year. So those of you still on the call, we'll hope you'll check that out as well. Thanks, Dave.
You got it. Thank you, guys.
And thank everybody. Thank you for taking our evaluation. We do have some graduation resources for you. And Kim, do you want to talk about this really briefly?
Yeah, you bet. You can call me the link queen if you'd like. That probably is appropriate for this particular slide. You'll see we just included some additional ideas and thoughts about places to get information on funding sources that might be available to help you with initiatives related to graduation, and just where your budget is with the new process that we have this year, and having passed the legislative budget here recently. So linking you to some of those tools and forms, and knowing, of course, that our legislature is allocating enough funding for our high school counselors to be a 1 to 236 ratio, but that is a district decision about how those funds are used. So if you're not quite there, maybe that could be a place to check in with your administrators on what might be a good proposal to get you closer to that. And then looking at some of the tools that we have, again, links to all kinds of great free curriculum pieces and guidance lessons and workbooks and websites that can help you in some of those making connections for kids with those career exploration pieces in their academic work. And then last but not least, just a whole nother mess of websites, many of which I've already mentioned, but some that are more set to that college preparation, grades 6 through 12 opportunities for further tools and resources to help you. We've got so much out there that you could fill your whole summer with checking this out if you'd like, or take a much needed break and make sure you do some self-care. So
we also have a great resource for you. If you want to talk to a person, you want that personalized support, we do have a green button. It's also available on OSSI's web pages. That's the Office of System and School Improvement. Please use the green button and get in contact with us. We'll hook you up with the right person. If you do want to get in contact with us, Kim, Dave, and I are available to help you, and we have our email addresses there for you. So send questions our way. I know Sunnyside has a lot of site visits and great stuff going on. Thinking about, are we using images from different places? Most of ours come from the Noun Project, or they're in the Creative Commons. We do have some discussion questions for the chat. So if you'd like to stick around and let us know some of your big takeaways from today, what are your next leadership moves? What you valued in our presentations, and what questions you still have. We're going to be here answering questions for a few minutes. So we're going to mute out. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you this afternoon for more on GATE Webinar 201.